people always ask me like, hey, do you still get nervous diving?
Mm-hmm.
It's again about pushing your own limits. That's the fun,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
People that watch me like, oh, I don't want to go after you because you just did like 2 or 3 flips. I'm like, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
Like we're all here having fun, you know?
I think as a director, I didn't want it to be like all my vision, you know, or like everything is me. Obviously working with other talented people that I love their work. I love what you do. It's like, how can we bring all those together and everybody feels that they've done the best that they can do?
You know, I know that if I had gone in, yeah, maybe he would have hung on to me and I would have had to dive down and maybe it would have been the same situation. But like if I had just been there to help pop his head up, like could have been a different scenario. And that, you know, that kind of haunts me a little bit of knowing like I should be able to make that assessment. And as someone who's trained, I should be able to trust my skills and ability.
I feel like you're going to be the 70-year-old Dan still hugging Spitting Cave superhero mode and it's why you will be separated from everyone else in my mind. I'm going to be like, okay, you're going to be, yeah, he'll be going forever.
Welcome back to the Poke ASMR.
Exactly. Cheers to the Poke.
Wow. Cheers.
Yeah, get a piece. Let's not touch, but
no,
we'll hold it up.
Touch tips.
There we go. Touching Poke tips. Cool. Well, I think there's no better way to start than a Poke tip touch. Welcome back, everyone, to the Layers Podcast, episode 4, with my very good friend, who I'm very excited to talk with today, Dan Worden. We just released your film. I mean, there's so much I could say about you, which we'll get into. I don't really have an intro for you either, but I feel like we'll talk through it. And there's so much things I think that I respect about you and what you do. But surface level, what do you do? Like who is Dan Worden, the AdventureMan Dan?
I'm laughing because you're like, this is layers. This is supposed to be the why, and we're starting with the what.
Oh yeah. The podcast is
we got to back up.
Yes, we back up a little bit. We have a full hour of just talking about you and the film.
And you. We're going to talk more about you.
Yeah, sure. We'll speak about that.
Well, hi, what's up? My name's Dan. If you guys don't know me, AdventureMan Dan. I mostly do cliff diving. I kind of brand myself now as a all-around adventure athlete and mostly water safety expert. So obviously I'm most known for cliff diving, but I'm also a open water swimmer. I swam NCAAs, you know, was a conference champion. Yeah. I should
just
have
a
my intro
legend.
better.
Yeah.
Just lots of water things. Developed an aquatic safety education curriculum. Have swam between islands from Molokai to Maui, or actually, Molokai to Lanai and Maui to Lanai. So just water person.
And I think, especially we've known each other, I want to say close to 10 years now already. I think when I first started GoProing and like you've been, I think, and that's the other thing. I think, in terms of when I think of original, like, inspiring people in my life,
it was the OG squad.
Yeah, the OG squad. You, like Taylor Fisher, how we were just kind of like hugging clips, and also like all your stuff previously that you'd done with like, you know, other YouTube videos that I've seen of just like you were at the cusp or at the forefront of all of that stuff, and I'm very grateful that we got to develop such a cool friendship through all of that, and then stayed friends throughout all these years.
Dude, same.
Yeah, but.
That's something I want to key in on just for a second.
Yeah.
To me, it's so cool living in Hawaii. I don't know your entire experience you've had, but being out here and having so many people come to Hawaii, and like that's how I networked with Instagram and social media. Was so many people wanted to come here and kind of experience, and be like, oh, I've seen you, I've seen Dan, I want to see what you do, I want to get that experience. So I got to network with everybody, right? You growing up here, you know, getting to also have that network. But most of the people that I've met, there's a handful I keep in contact with, but like, you know. You talk about the OG squad, there's like the good friends squad, you know, and like I'm still happy that we are friends and like hanging out. Like I still came to your wedding. There's not that many of that squad that like do keep in touch that much. So I think that's really cool to still maintain that friendship.
That's fair. And I think, you know, again, seasons of our lives, we are always kind of changing through things, but I'm very grateful again that you've kind of stuck there and like we've been able to just stay friends. And also we've been able to create together still.
Yes.
Because I think I have some of the funnest times and memories, and just like always the coolest stuff comes out of anytime a camera is on you. And as a filmmaker, it's just my dream, just to like be able to, make cool stuff with people that genuinely, and you're also a photographer, filmmaker yourself. So it's like the circles that you kind of like cross between is very fun and very, I think, unique. There's not a lot of, people with your skill sets that like tread both worlds. So for me, as just pretty much only a filmmaker, I hut clips once in a while, but it's not anymore. It's a dream that I get to like work with you, and you also understand the filming process, the creating, and all that stuff. So with that, I feel like there's a good place we could start with maybe was the Last Layers film that we just released with you. That was on you and your story, somewhat covering a bit of why you're doing what you're doing. Yes, yeah, very small one facet, because of, again, you're so multifaceted. There's so many things that we could have honed in on, but for the most part, how did you feel about the process of it? Because I think we all see how it came out. That was mostly on my part of like editing.
You killed it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that you like, that's the goal, is like, I hope that the people that it's on like actually feel like it's good and true to them. But yeah, was there any kind of fun moments or things that come to mind when it comes to like making this film in particular?
When I think about it, the things that come to mind right away are just like the phases that it took to get into it. Like I remember you first being like, yo, do you still want to do something? And I was like, well, of course, but like what? Like I do so many things now that I wasn't sure of the direction. And so then us sitting down at Island Brew and just like talking through it. And I remember leaving that and being like, I'm excited for something, but I'm not totally sure what yet.
Yeah.
Like it was cool to be back in that creative sphere. Again, you just exude creative energy. So like, I remember you said in that one, like, oh, this is going really smooth. Like we're bouncing ideas back and forth. And I'm like, well, same. Like it just, I think friendship obviously helps, but also just like the way you approach creative things. I think it's important that you put some bounds on stuff, especially for me.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
We can talk about that. But you know what you're going to accomplish. You kind of have some of that vision. And so to get to see what you're thinking in your mind and having you articulate that vision, and then me being in front of the camera side, kind of understanding what you want, but then also knowing, well, what can I do in this moment?
Yeah.
How can I kind of like one up it, or how can I add to this? How can I deliver on what you've got, and then add my kind of flair to it? And like, that's what's cool about these kind of projects. It's like the more you know the videographer and you know their skill set, like, I know that you're really good at like documenting moments and like capturing what's going on and kind of having a little bit of storytelling and getting to play with that and be like, hey, what can I do that's going to obviously showcase action to be fun, but also play into Nai's strengths and like, let's make a project that really is cool.
Yeah. And I think that was a fun part of it, especially working with you. Again, it's like you understand what goes into it. When we were shooting, I think what was very forefront in my head was like, okay, I'm working with, you're an athlete, you're a professional athlete. And the cool thing with these was that there's no like set, I guess. We didn't have a shot list, we just kind of like, I had a shot list of like all the supporting B-roll, but when it came to actual dives and doing what you do best, I was like, okay, I'm not the driver's seat here. I wanted you to feel that, however you were feeling and what you thought was best for the place that we were doing, or, just that whole process. I was like, okay, you're the expert on it. How are you feeling for one? What do you feel like doing for two? And what do you think is going to be best for it? I wanted to like, I hope I made you feel that you felt in the driver's seat and control for most of that.
Definitely.
I know there was like a part where, obviously it's like we're filming and you want to feel like, okay, I want to send it. Like you want to do your Sukis at Capenna and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to dive into that for sure.
Yeah. What was at the forefront of your head during all of that filming, I guess? Like,
so again, aquatic safety expert, and that's kind of what I branded myself as more recently when I've been doing those, aquatic safety education, swim lessons, and doing that curriculum development stuff with the nonprofit. And so while that's always been a part of how I approach diving, I'm not the reckless, like, hey, I want to send it. Like I always approach the cliff of what can I do? What's possible here? how can I kind of like push my limit to be good at what I'm doing, but also like be risk managing and know what I can do in the moment. And so each cliff you approach, there's different things you can do. Like spinning caves, because of the gap that's there, you're going to notice that all I'm going to do is probably the flying front flip off the top. I'm super, consistent with my gainer there.
Yes.
Iconic.
Oh,
for sure.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But like, there's only certain flips that you can do at that one cliff versus if we're going to like ledge or high dive or one of the other ones where it's a little bit more of a sheer drop.
Yes.
Then I'm like, okay, now I can do the back double where I kick out like straight at the rock and just have that float. That looks really cool in my mind.
Yes.
I couldn't do that at Spinning Cave,
Yeah.
And then you go to Capenna where it's not quite as high, but then you do have a good takeoff. And that's when you're like, all right, what tricks can I get in here that are still going to be fun that I'm still going to do?
Yeah.
And so, that moment where we were at Capenna and I'm nervous about, I haven't done a souk since like, I think my last shoulder surgery. So I was like, I really want this. Like, this is the time to do it with Nye. Like, I'm motivated. I'm inspired. I know this is going to look great.
Yes.
But at the same time, like, people always ask me like, hey, do you still get nervous diving? And it's not as much, height is a big factor. You go to a new cliff and you're like, oh, this is tall. But it's, again, about pushing your own limits. Anybody else that goes, if all you know how to do is straight jump and you're pushing your limit to do that, like, that's the fun, People that watch me like, oh, I don't want to go after you because you just did like 2 or 3 flips. I'm like, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
Like, we're all here having fun,
Yeah.
So pushing that own limit and like wanting that in the moment of like, hey, I know I'm not going to get another shot to capture this one again. I really want to pull off this souk and this is a good time to do it. Yeah. That was one that came to my forefront of my mind right there.
Cool.
I think.
Yeah. And I love those like very raw, when it actually does come together. I think we have clips of like when you nail it. It's like, there's such a cool feeling. And it's cool getting to like dive into your mind as as a cliff diver, what's going on, especially like in the filming process. But sorry, I had my head go so far in that last sentence that you just talked about. There's so many cool things I want to, dive into with you. But to rewind a little bit, we, the fun part of creating with you, and especially I think once we've learned our kind of like creative styles, I think we talked about this early on where you have a bit of a perfectionist.
That's so nice of you.
A bit of that, I think it clearly shines through in your professional athlete, doing what you do as a swimmer, as a cliff diver. There are, I think, minute things that I, as a layperson, would not, very, pay attention to. And especially even like from a film side, I see just a beautifully framed clip and you see something totally different with your, I guess, like actions and like the little corrections in the muscles and like how you're doing it all. Do you think, it's clear that plays a part in pretty much everything you're doing, that attention to detail, that kind of perfectionist mindset. Do you think that's been beneficial to you? How do you like, I'm trying to dive more into your mind and like how you think.
I've got a couple different directions I want to go on that too. The perfectionism, how do I phrase this? It's like, I don't necessarily see it as perfectionism. I see it as wanting to perform to what I can do. Anything I approach, I want to be good at it. And not just that I want to be good at it, but I also want to know that, hey, I'm testing my own limit or I'm seeing what's possible. I want to know that what I did that I'm kind of proud of, and I approach everything with that. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. If I'm going to spend the time to do it, like, why not make it as good as I can do, Yeah. And especially when I'm doing stuff with you where you're pulling out your camera and I'm like, hey, this is the moment where we want to do something well. Why not do it as good as I possibly can, or that represents an accurate representation of what I can do, and that carries over into everything. So fortunately or unfortunately, because I have the experience as a professional athlete and as a photographer and a videographer, and I know what it looks like in post, I know how to edit, I know how to shoot, I know what the framing is going to look like, I know what I'm doing in midair, I can comprehend all these things that's happening at once. And now I'm trying to make the best product and do the best job that I can do while also being aware of all the other pieces that are being pulled in. One thing that was really interesting early on in the social media world, when I was doing a video with Shibby, and I remember this video we made, and it was with some of the other diver girls that I was training with at UH at the time because I was still on the team over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in the editing room with him, kind of like after the final cut had been done, I'm looking at it and being like, he chose only the shots that he did good and not the shots that they did good. And like, to me, that was selfish. That was him saying like, oh, I don't care how good they did. I don't care if they look bad dessing up the dive. Like, I want the one where I had the most motion in the foreground, or I want the shot that like makes him look the best. And that was just something from early on that I was like, I don't ever want that to be part of my, like, not just personality, but any persona or any project I'm a part of. I want everybody to be like stoked on what they're making, which again, I know all the pieces, like I'm able to confer, I'm able to talk to you about framing, and I'm able, but when I approach something, I want everyone to be like, yes, this is an accurate representation of my ability and how good we can make something.
That's good.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, I mean, obviously I kind of headed the post on this last film, and I think it was something that I was also wanted to be cognizant of, where, I understand the care that you put into it. You feel all this way because you genuinely care about it.
Yes.
And I think that's like the other thing is like when people come together for a project, like if they actually care, it shows that they, want to create the best product. And for me, it's like having this film done, I think we both line up in that sense of like, okay, I want to make sure Dan's happy. I want to make sure I feel good about this as well. There, when I was in post, I kind of had that in the back of my mind. I was like, oh my God, I need to make sure Dan is happy about this edit, because I genuinely, like, I'm inspired by you. Your stuff has, made me want to be a better creator. And it's kind of like a little pressure that I put on myself for this one. But there was a sense of, I didn't want to let you down kind of thing with this, for sure. And the fun part of it was I enjoyed this part too. I got to bring in a bunch of people that
was so cool.
Yeah, that like whose work so cool. I loved. Zan Griffin, who composed the soundtrack behind it. He's so good at what he does.
Yeah.
I gave him one little reference, basically track to like the picture lock, and he came back with his version, and it was just like, okay, dude, I have no revisions. It was perfect, and he crushed it.
First try. I love it.
Harvey from H1 Sound did the sound design. We had a bunch of other people come in and be part of it, but I took a little bit of pressure off of me because I was like, okay, I know how this, I want it to kind of like come together.
Yeah.
So if you didn't like it, I was like, okay, it's not all on me. I can tell some other people about it. But was there any, I guess when it comes to you overseeing, obviously the entire product that we had, did you feel like you were able to kind of let go of some of your, I don't want to say perfectionism because it's not,
no, there's a dynamic in terms of like accepting that, hey, if you want something done well, you do it yourself,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Well, I can't edit as good as you.
Sure.
There's another aspect of that of like, hey, I'm aware of what goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
But bro, you blow my mind creatively. Like the vision with the projector and being able to match cut those and just, it just comes so naturally to you. And to be able to see that happen in real time. Oh, it's the coolest thing.
Completely unplanned. I think.
But you had it, you did it, whether it was subconsciously before or you see in the editing room.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that like me, like I can make something that's there and it's going to be as good as I can do, but it's bland compared to what you put together, And so when I come into viewing something like that, where, yeah, of course I'm going to have opinions of like, oh, I felt like this way and this like that, I can give some feedback on direction to make it better in my mind of what I see. Yeah. But like you already elevated it to this level and the first draft was up here,
Sure.
So like, it's not all about like, hey, could I have done it better myself? Obviously, like that collaboration makes it a higher level. And then getting to have that back and forth where we're both kind of pushing each other. That's what brainstorming is.
Yes.
With any idea that you have, you get to make it better. And that was really cool.
Yeah.
back and forth thing and kind of being like, all right, what can we tweak here
Mm-hmm.
with the transition to the opening thing, you know, where you actually put out a second edit for me to look at. And I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? Actually, no, the first one was better. Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
It's important to have those. I like
Yeah.
that open line of communication too, of like, I hope you
Yeah.
felt free to be able to like say your piece or like give your opinion on things. And again, I think that's part of like working with a team is then you have more people bringing their taste into it. And I think as a director, I didn't want it to be like all my vision, you know, or like everything is me. I think obviously working with other talented people that I love their work, I love what you do. It's like, how can we bring all those together and everybody feels that they've done the best that they can do?
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So
Okay, cool.
one thing that I love is working with different people, you know, like off the top of my head, I have like distinct memories of how we used to do projects back in the day with GoPro versus how we do stuff now.
Yeah.
You know, different projects that I've done with Sage, doing one with Vincent and Lucas, doing stuff with Alex Stroll, everybody, Ryan Moss, you know, just everybody coming to it and approaching it in a different way. There's that, you know, you set the bar high on your editing or, you know, your vision or whatever.
Sure.
And then, you know, whatever that person is bringing that vision, I kind of can match that energy, you know? And it's really interesting in each dynamic to feel how the shoot and the final product reflects that friendship and dynamic that it is.
Yeah.
What I don't have a handle for, because I've never had the experience of, is getting to kind of outsource those other pieces. Like you might still have your vision, you know, but now you're sending off to a sound designer. And, you know, can you talk to me about that? Like what goes through your mind of how do you find people to work with and what does that feel like, dude?
I think I've spent a lot of time scouring social media and, you know, just like the internet in general of people whose, you know, work that I've admired. The process of like, I just wrote down, I was like, who would I love to like do stuff with and whose work do I like the most? It's weird. Maybe I have to think more project by project for sure. I'm sure it depends, but like I didn't come into it with like, oh, I think he would be perfect for, you know, or, you know, like molding it to like, he'd be perfect for this, but not this guy, or they would be better than this other person. I was just like, who can I kind of like bring on because I love what they do. And that was the fun part of being that in this collaborative space was like, your taste I trust because you've clearly done incredible stuff. I'm going to trust you fully with like what you're doing, especially because these are passion projects. You know, it's not, it's different than like if we had $1 million budget behind it and, you know, there's a bit of pressure, but I was like, okay, this, if you're down, what would your take be on this? Here's a little bit of guidance, but like take it and run with it. I felt very, again, I felt like some pressure was off me for one, but also I was just excited. I was like, I was able to be a observer again, or like someone who's like an appreciator of the art as I'm watching the art being formed.
That's cool.
Rather than just like being the sole artist. You know what I mean? So I thought it was the coolest thing, just being able to like see their takes and like bring it in. And then I was just like, kind of like, directing it, you know, I was just like kind of guiding it into what it is. So it was really fun. And I think in the future, like I'd like most of my projects to feel that way. If people, you know, want to work with me more, I would hope that they feel free and like very just open to like do the work that they feel is good and would be the best work that they can do. I hope that answers your question. I don't know if that was like pretty accurate or not, but I feel like I went all over the place with that.
That's how all these answers are.
Yeah. No, but it's cool. And I think, again, because you have that understanding of like the film side and like the creative aspect to it. I don't want to ask to compare anything, but I'm sure, you know, again, you work with so many other photographers and filmmakers and stuff. What do you find the most fun part of doing what you get to do? I mean, we talk about why you do it, and maybe that's a better question. Sorry.
Okay.
There was, again, we only had 2 minutes to tell our film in this, and I cut so much good.
Yes, I know
good
you did.
stuff.
I know you did.
So we sat down for about an hour and just like kind of you spitballed some of like why you do what you do, and I think this would be a great place to kind of like get into that a bit more. I cut so much good stuff that I was like mind blown with to just get this the VO, the voiceover that we had for your film. and I'm kind of sad about it, you know. But I think for what it is, to make the most concise little piece that we did, I'm happy with how it turned out. But to talk more about your motives and like what drives you and what makes you keep doing what you're doing, like we landed on so many different topics.
We were all over the place.
We were.
I think that needs to be the first thing that's said. It is like, props to you for taking all the words that we spitballed there and finding a consistent linear story.
Yeah.
Because I know that we were not linear.
Yeah.
And I know there was a few stories that didn't have an ending, you know, like a beginning, middle, end. Like you did a really good job with that voiceover tying it together and like finding the ways, because I also know that wasn't a straight shot. You know, like I know you pulled things from the beginning and the end.
Totally.
And
like, I tried, you know what it was? I tried, I feel like we had sections of what you recorded, and I was like, what's the best from this section? What's the best from this section? And then like tried to like combine them all in some way. But again, I had to leave out the 90% of everything else that was said. But
I think this is a weird random tangent on like both writing and filming and like stuff. But I'm a true believer that the better your final project is, or the better like composer is the wrong word for like writing or things, but like you know you have something good when you're cutting A-roll.
Yes. You said that. I remember. I think you said that in one of our last conversations.
Oh, that's hilarious.
When you're cutting A grade stuff, if you're getting rid of that, you got,
because you still got to condense the story down. You know, whether you're writing and you're like, oh, I need this succinct paragraph to say this thing, and this says it. You know, I'd love to have this little anecdote, but like I need to make it hit its mark. Cutting that A-roll and keeping it succinct is a skill in itself. You know, and that's how you know you have something good. Is being like, oh, I don't want to cut this, but like, I got to. You know, you got to make those tough choices.
Sure. I remember originally when we sat down at Island Brew and we were kind of brainstorming, we talked about a story, or like we kind of had like our own idea of like, oh, where could this voiceover go and like how would we want it to be? So we came up with a little idea of like maybe telling a story that you had encountered in your past and trying to involve that. But we ended up, I remember you kind of scripted your own thing at first too. Like,
there's a way that it worked, but it had to be said in such a specific way that it needed a script for me to kind of follow along, because it needed some dots to be connected that weren't natural for me to say off the cuff. You know, I had to have it a little more well written. So I remember trying to write that and being like, I see there's a vision, there's a way to do it. And like, I tried to say it out loud a couple times and I was struggling.
Yeah, and it was tough, wasn't it? Yeah. Maybe we could talk about that now if you want. I think you remember the original kind of like script that we wrote before we just trashed it all, and then dude, that's the second time.
Yerba mate and poke. At least you didn't get on the keyboard.
Whatever.
This time.
I quit.
Do you want my chopsticks? You want to keep
No, you're good. I'll eat them later. I'll just finger them. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk about that, because again, like I want to dive more into why you do what you do, and I think that'd be cool for people to hear. I find it very inspiring. I find it very, again, interesting about getting to look into your mind and stuff. So
there's a lot of depth there.
Yeah, and I think maybe we don't have to go so deep.
Let me try and start from like the beginning of just when I was little. I have a picture of me standing on the 3-meter board in my hometown diving board, and there's no club diving team, so I wasn't a diver. I was only a swimmer at this time, but like wanting to kind of like jump off and like push that limit and just be like, I can do this, and like being so scared to do it. And then living basically at that pool growing up and like recognizing that, oh, I'm an okay swimmer. I wasn't very good. I didn't get good actually until high school. Story in itself. But but like looking at like lifeguarding and looking at like the different aspects of the pool of like, hey, I want to know how the chlorine feeder works, because if it ever breaks down, like I'm here all the time, I can go fix it real quick. Or like, hey, if somebody is in trouble, not just here at the pool, but like for example, we would go to swim meets sometimes down in Bend, and it's a 2.5-hour drive, and there's a lake along the way that we would stop at, and the whole team would swim and hang out, which is actually tangent real quick, but that's where my fear of lake bottoms come from. But different story. Yeah. Also, cool. I'm going on so many tangents here.
No, that's fine.
But the original one of my original drives for doing cliff diving and for doing swimming and really anything I do and wanting to be the best that I can do is knowing that I can help other people in that situation. You know, having the confidence of saying, hey, I did train lifeguarding. I do know all these skills. If something were to happen, now I can put together my cliff diving. I can get into a cliff that other people wouldn't be able to make a rescue. I can swim better than other people could handle the currents, and I could do something that somebody else couldn't, you know? And that drive and knowing that kind of like piece of motivation of being like, hey, I recognize that I have ability that a lot of people can't, and I want to be able to use it. Yes, I'm having fun. I'm jumping off the cliff. You know, it's a great time to be upside down, but also in the back of my head, it's, can I do this? Can I do this anywhere else? Like, what am I practicing here that's going to carry over? And can I do this at a different place in case there was an emergency?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times when I went places, I recognized that I was the most capable person of getting myself out. So there's a lot of risk management in itself of when I'm diving for the first time, I was usually depth checking. I was usually the first one of our whole squad to go because no one else wanted to, and they wanted it to be safe, right? And so me being the one to go down and depth check and knowing exactly where the rocks are and having to describe it to everyone else, there's a little bit on me that's like, okay, I'm telling them where to be safe, and now I need to make the rescue if anything happens. And so again, I wanted to be confident that I had the skill, I had the ability, and I had the training to basically make sure that this fun thing that I wanted to be doing, but also like if it wasn't a fun situation, if somebody got hurt, I could be there. And I have tons of stories of seeing people fall in at spinning caves. I've made a bunch of rescues there. I've made rescues at South Point, like this guy who was actually a W amputee. I helped get him out away from the ladder because he went in and then he couldn't get out.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's been a lot of times that it was useful and I did good stuff. And then the story, now to wrap it all the way back around to where we came, that was a story of a time where I didn't react. To rehash the story real quick, I had shoulder surgery the next day. So my parents were in town. They were going to help kind of take care of me because you're bedridden after the shoulder surgery for a day or two. And so before the shoulder surgery, went down on a hike down by Hanama Bay Ridge, if you've been to the rock arch there. And the waves were kind of big. And we ran into some other hikers during the morning. And I had gone down kind of near the edge where it's a little bit lower, but I could see the waves were coming in. And so I stayed away from that spot. Well, one of the other random guys that was there in a hiking group ended up getting swept in. And I didn't totally see it, but I'm assuming that he hit his head as he went in. And I'm watching him. And like, he's okay. You know, he's bobbing up. He's taking some breaths. Like I see him. He doesn't look like he's panicking, but he's also not like asking for help or really doing anything. And so I'm like, hey, yo, call 911. Like we're getting people on the phone. I start looking for an entry because I've never actually dove there. There is a spot that I think I can do from the other side, but I've never done it. And it's kind of like a redemption arc that I'd love to do someday. But this reason it's a redemption arc is because I slowly watched this guy breathe slower and slower and eventually was face down. I was getting ready to jump in. And I had my mom yelling at me like, hey, you're going to hurt yourself. Like you have surgery tomorrow because your shoulder's literally broken. Like, don't hurt yourself more. And in my mind, I'm like, this guy's hurt. Like, I want to do something. Like, this is my whole purpose, right? Yeah. And then the other time, there's this other lady that had come with this guy yelling and screaming like, no, it's okay. He knows how to swim. Find out later that she had met him the first time that day. Like, she had no idea. Yeah. But, it is a real thing to have a double victim in a rescuer situation. A lot of times, a rescuer will jump in, and the conditions of whatever made that a dangerous situation in the first place, you end up both drowning. Yes, so both, I want to be clear that like she probably was right for the average person, but that's me. Like again, I've trained. Like that's what I want to know is that I can do things that other people can't. Yeah. So that was a pretty dark moment later on, especially with being bedridden and just like not being able to go anywhere and do anything, knowing that this guy died. And dude, props to the Hanama Bay lifeguard that paddled out to get him. Like we were on the phone on 911 right away. They were bringing people from Mauna Loa Bay on the boat. They were sending a jet ski from Sandy's, and it was still that lifeguard from Hanama Bay that paddled out first. Like, props to him. He was champ status for sure. Yeah. But like, dude, I know that if I had gone in, maybe he would have hung on to me and I would have had to dive down and maybe it would have been the same situation. But like, if I had just been there to help pop his head up, like, could have been a different scenario. And that, that kind of haunts me a little bit of knowing like, yes, I was an injured wing. I didn't have an arm. Yes, I'd never done there and couldn't, depth check. Yes, I had people yelling at me saying he's okay.
Yeah.
But like as a lifeguard, I should be able to make that assessment. And as someone who's trained, I should be able to trust my skills and ability. And now for another tangent to go off, but I think that's something that's also underrated with the people that are just like, oh, I want to send it. Like I want to go.
Yes.
They're not there to test their ability. They're there to like, let me push the limit because this is adrenaline rush and only feel it. But without knowing what your limit is, like pushing it in little increments, it's so easy to go over the top and then you get injured and then you're done. That's one of the reasons why I'm an OG, still here and kicking, is
Still
because
going. Yes.
I want to keep doing it long term. I want this sport to be something I'm still doing when I'm, 10, 20 years in the future. You look at most of the guys, they've hurt themselves or they're done already.
And they're just finished. Yeah.
And they're finished. So getting to do it in a way that allows me to keep enjoying this sport and knowing the limit and not just being reckless with it, but saying, hey, what is my purpose here? Like, what can I do? And, I can still have fun. I can still outperform most people, but I'm doing it in a way that isn't just reckless.
Yes.
It's there to have a good time.
Yeah. Dude, again, that just fully embodies layers, because again, like there is that, I mean, everyone sees it. Like you said it, like everyone's just going, or you see the fun, really cool, flashy stuff, but you have such a more intentional reason behind what you're doing. And it's not just for the flashy fun stuff, which is cool, but you also have this practical, literally life-saving kind of, just safety driven, oriented, I think it's just so fascinating. I love hearing, and that, again, it's why you're still here, and it's why you will be separated from everyone else in my mind. I'm gonna be like, okay, you're gonna be, he'll be going forever. I feel like you're gonna be the 70-year-old Dan, still hugging spitting caves superhero mode, just off spitting caves. But
I hope so.
Yeah, I think that's so cool. And I think I remember when we were sitting down and kind of talking through this kind of stuff, I asked you before, like, it's hard to have goals with I guess what you're doing and like how you live, or like the things that you do, living your life now, because you do so much other stuff. You develop the aquatic safety or the programs and all of these other things, and you also still go out and have fun and just huck stuff for films and like keeping it cool. But one of my questions I had for you back then was like, what's the end goal? Or, I mean, there is no end goal, obviously. But what was it that you were like striving for in the future? Because again, like you said, it's not going to last forever. We're getting older. I'm 30, you're 30 something. And it's not to out us or anything. But I, for one, I think it's so inspiring that you still continue to live your life with this kind of mindset. How do you, the way you carry yourself nowadays and like the reason you're still doing it, what does that look like? How, why is it still such a forefront thing for you?
To be honest, there's a little bit of it that's just kind of tied to my own identity. Yeah. I identify as an athlete very first. We talked about the fact that for a while, I had to pick up the camera when we were shooting for Royal Caribbean or doing those other projects.
Yeah.
They wanted influencers, they wanted photographers, they need those deliverables. So I got good at that stuff because I had to. But at the end of the day, and at the very beginning, I identify as an athlete. That's me. And I want to, again, know what my limit is. And I want to know that I can still perform. And I want to keep performing to the best of my ability. Because every time I do something, I want to know that it's an accurate representation of what can I do. And sometimes it's in that moment, like an accurate representation of what you're able to do at 30 is going to be different than what you can do at 50.
Yes. Yeah.
But understanding how that works and understanding how much time you put into training, that's information in itself. Tangent on, another thing that grinds my gears sometimes, but people that do a hike or jump a waterfall, or they say, oh, I slayed Mother Nature. I slayed this cliff, or I conquered nature. I'm like, dude, you didn't conquer nature.
Yeah.
She lets you play for a day. Things lined up. You had it in the right moment, but like the reason why things like that are so cool and inspiring is because conditions do change, Let's say you got more tired one day. Let's say you weren't as prepared. You didn't drink as much water. Let's say there was a rainstorm, a lightning storm. The different conditions make the same adventure different.
Yeah.
And so you can say, hey, I got to do this one time, but you can never say that you conquered something because the minute you say that, you know, like Everest is a great example. People have climbed Everest multiple times and on the 8th time they die.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not just about you and it's not just about you knowing your ability. Even if you perform your best, it really is about what is the scenario and what are all the other nuances in the situation.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes, obviously you said it, like it's you and nature. Right. It's not just like, it's not a you thing at all. Like she lets you be there for whatever amount of time to go and make it happen. I love that. Again, that's another thing that I respect and admire about you because you have that very, very forefront in things that you're doing, especially as like, I don't know why I thought of this, but the AdventureMan Dan kind of like not persona. It is you.
It's a persona.
But yeah, I guess. There, you know, it's I've respected it because I see how you operate in nature also. There's a, you know, again, like a deeper connection, if you will, but you're aware of that. It's not like you don't have any like kind of like pride, like that's like overinflated, even though you're such a like superhero basically. And there's been humility and a realization that you're not all that, you know, but you are. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I've always just respected the way that you've kind of like operated, and you know,
there's always someone better, you know.
That's fair.
I think that's even when I was swimming and, you know, state champion or, you know, getting recruited to Hawaii or, you know, OG cliff diving where there was nobody else doing what we were doing, the Red Bull divers were kicking our butt.
Sure.
You know, like they would call me up and be like, hey, how are you like blowing up on social right now? Like our dives are so much harder. You know? I mean, they didn't say any of that, but that's the gist of what was going on.
Sure.
They're like, wait, we're diving from higher, we're doing more flips, and yet his videos are going viral. Like what's going on here? And so like my perspective is there's always someone out there that's going to be better than you. You know, and you can draw from that from inspiration.
Yeah.
You know, like I can watch like, dude, Artem Stelchenko, the Russian diver, is like my fucking hero for the way that he would do some of those dives. It's the inspiration for how I do the flying frontside spinning caves. And like, there's a form and a way that I hold it that it's not traditional for a lot of divers to do. You'll look at, it's semantics. Like you're going to watch the clip and be like, wait, can I really see this? Like a lot of divers going to their pike, they're going to close their legs and bring their body together at the same time because it allows you to stall a little bit more. Versus Artem's dive, his legs stay still and he brings his body up to his legs. And so it's this fluid motion where if you mess it up, that means on the bottom of the dive, you're going over, going to smack your face and your balls. But like to me, watching that, it's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Or like getting to dive with Orlando. He was the face of Red Bull cliff diving for 10 years. Like he's the OG of the OG champ. And like getting to train with him was so cool, and him giving me little tips like, hey, make sure your arms are out here so you can see both your fingers. That way you're not going to end up rotating, because if you can't see your fingers, like one arm can actually be dropped down or something like that. So, you know, he's giving me those little tips, and there's always that inspiration of, hey, there's someone better than you.
Yes.
And maybe if I was trying to do Red Bull and I was competing, like, okay, that might be my competitor, but like the community of that kind of stuff is so small that everybody wants everybody to be doing good.
Yeah.
You want to get elevated. You want to get better. And that's what I think is super cool about that dynamic. It's just like, dude, you might be an elite club, and yes, there's competitive minds, but like, let's push the sport. Let's get better.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Rising
stuff.
tide lifts all boats, right?
For sure.
Like, so when you're, I don't know why, but I thought of when you're doing this, I have a shot. There's a shot in the film of like you doing that, looking at, is that what you're doing when you are visualizing and you're preparing for your jump? I've seen you, you know, arms out, and you look and you kind of like, is that
it's just a little reminder of like, hey, where are my fingers? Like looking at my peripheral vision, just kind of like looking out of the corner of my eye, like, all right, know where my fingers need to be. That's kind of the position that I'm aiming for in midair.
So sick. I loved getting to shoot your prep too. Like that's for me. I was like, and I didn't mean to, you know, because we kind of like match cut between the studio stuff, and it ended up working out really well.
But I know it was luck.
It was totally luck. I was like, I'm just gonna shoot this because we have the same angle. I didn't know if it would match cut well together, but it did. And back to kind of, I guess, making the film and stuff. That studio session was, I think, really fun for one, but also like the most like happy accident of like, okay, in the edit it came together like with the, you know, your full on face portrait with the other projector side hitting, and like kind of like doing that little.
How long were we in the studio for? Like an hour and a half,
hour
2
half,
hours?
yeah, no more than 2. And
You guys, you got to know this about Nye. Like we went in there with one vision. He had the idea of doing the rear projector, like having it come back, and then we were just gonna fuck around. And like the first hour and 15 minutes of our hour and a half session, we were just trying different things and playing around. And we both were like, well, that was kind of cool, but like wasn't quite it. Like it wasn't quite there. It was the last 15 minutes that everything clicked together and it just worked.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And sometimes it takes that to like get to that point. Right. And I consider that like, it's pretty similar with like voiceover stuff. Like sometimes it takes so much other front stuff in order to get to like the 2 minutes of good stuff at the end. And like, it's worth it. And it's totally worth it at the end. We shot the entire film on the Atlas lenses, which I was very, very stoked on, the anamorphic look. So I wanted to give a quick just like shout out to them. I mean, they pretty much sponsored the piece. And I think it gave the right look to what we were trying to achieve in terms of like the characteristics, the realism of like having that anamorphic in there. And I personally haven't seen a very good cliff diving film with that kind of like feel and that artistic, I guess, like characteristics to those visuals. I'm very glad how they turned out. I think, how did you feel about how the look of it? I mean,
so like, you know, my knowledge of videography and photography only goes so far. You know, I really haven't stayed up with it, the most recent stuff, but to see you excited about pulling them out and then seeing the stuff that comes out of it that did have that kind of feel. Again, one thing about your style that I've always appreciated is capturing the moments. You know, you look at a lot of different, especially the early Instagram people, you know, where it's just those highlight reels and like, oh, let me see the trip highlights and the flashy moments and, you know, goals and all that stuff. And one thing I've liked about your style has always been a little bit of grit and kind of like a little bit of behind the scenes, but it really is, it's the moment. You know, like when I go somewhere, again, I've worked with a lot of different videographers and photographers, and I know what it takes to capture those hero moments. The ones that mean the most to me are the ones that capture the moments off that just happen. You know, like I love the photo that Maddie shot of us. I'm like looking over your shoulder, we're comparing it, we're talking something like, dude, I was like, this is the coolest thing. So I forget where I was going with that.
No. It's the same. It's that feeling of like, holy, like this is magic happening kind of thing. And we're both kind of in it. I personally, I remember shooting the first day at Ledge where we like tested and I had these aren't small lenses either. They're like big beefy boys, and they're like probably heavier than the Raptor itself. And I'd never shot like anything high action or high speed with them. So I remember having this thing like dangling off the edge of this cliff. You're like, you know, a bit of space away, and I'm just like trying to yell at you, okay, we're 3, 2, 1, we count it down, and you're going. And because this thing is so big, I couldn't move it. I couldn't panic quickly enough to like follow you. So many of my shots are just like the first half, and then you just leave frame, and then I like try to catch up with you, and then you're back in frame. Or it's like I'm ahead of you, and then I'm not even catching the first part of it, and I catch only the landing. So I thought it was just really interesting because the process of shooting this was very foreign to me, or it was like very new
experience. And
it was another, again, like kind of challenge. And because going through it, it's like, okay, now I know I would do things a little bit maybe differently next time, or have a better idea of like, okay, what we're getting involved with. Because again, you're moving so quickly in the air, you're kind of like doing all this stuff. I have to be cognizant of, okay, I can't move my camera that quickly. There's so many like
little
close
details.
Little things that add up to it. And then, you know, the shots that are like cropped in and like it's just your feet. It turned out really cool, but that was not intentional. I was like, it's just Dan's feet leaving the on the gainer, and like you're just leaving the cliff. And you know, I was like, it turned out cool, but I didn't mean to do that because I just couldn't move it quickly enough.
I mean, I think super zoomed in shots are so underrated in the action world. You know, like again, starting off with GoPros and everything like that, where everything's super wide. I just love the tight look of like, let's get in there. And I knew because of what you were telling me on the cliff, I knew you were missing stuff. You know, like it was funny to see you, like you talk about me being a perfectionist, like, oh, I want to point my toes more. Well, I heard you be like, I need another one.
So
and
many,
I was like, all right, I'm down.
well, there was so many times I was like, Dan, I need to redo this. And I was just worried. I was like, man, I can't just keep sending him off this clip every like 40 times a day. Like I wasn't trying to do that. So
I'm down.
there was points where I was just like, yeah, I got it. And I was like, I could have gotten so much better stuff.
But what I wanted to say is I was knowing that you were missing stuff and knowing how hard that is to be tight and knowing what those lenses were. I mean, I didn't really know what they were. Like, you know, you explaining how it's a new experience filming with a different thing. Like that's really cool. But like, I wanted to say, dude, you killed the tight shots. Like there's a couple in there where you're tracking the whole thing that I'm like, these are one of my favorite shots that I have.
Yeah, they're cool.
You know,
they're cool.
They came out good.
I think they're perfect for what they are, even though like in their imperfections, the verite of it.
I think every time you do something too is a moment to learn.
Yes.
You know, again, how I approach cliff diving, every time I go up to the cliff, I'm looking like, hey, can I do this here? You learned when you had the lenses in the moment.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, I need to move faster. Or I need to anticipate more and start this weight balance so I can do stuff. And so now next time you go shoot something fast action, you know,
the
it
next
wasn't
time we
with
shoot.
me or the next time we shoot, sure. But, you know, you're going to do another layers film with some action people, you know, or something. I don't know what it's going to be next. I'm looking forward to it already. But having that experience is already going to add to make you a better filmmaker. 100%. And it's going to be so cool.
Very true. Very true. I need to bring this guy up because he did such a good job too. Nick Yee, who did the FPV drone on it was such a freaking crazy, cool, and also just like pretty seamless work experience. And just like having him come and like do his thing with you, watching you two bounce ideas off of each other and like kind of communicate things through was so cool to see too. He flew at Capenna the first day and then also at Spitting Caves with you. And I thought that was sick that he came just like ready to like rip, and I was like, dude, I want you to feel exactly what you think would do good for this shot. And you know, he's such an incredible like FPV pilot, and then seeing you guys kind of like bouncing ideas. I'm gonna do this. I remember you guys had the shot of you running the flying front at Spitting Caves, and he turned his GoPro around on the drone, so he was flying forward but like with the intention of shooting the shot backwards. So he had no idea what he was shooting. He was just knowing, okay, I'm going to dive down here and you're going to follow. You guys timed it. It took a couple of times to really nail timing. But that shot just turned out so cool. And I wanted to talk about it. Yeah.
There's so many, no, I'm going to phrase it the other way. There's not many shots anymore at Spitting Caves to get me excited. You know, like I have so much of me. It's hilarious when I go there and I have tourist people come up like, yo, I got a really cool shot of you jumping off. And I got to accept it and I got to be like happy about it. But like inside, I'm like, I don't really care.
Oh
like I've got the same dive on a red. Funny. Like I don't need your iPhone video.
Let me send this to you. What's your email? Like,
You know, funny. I appreciate it. You know, it's really cool to connect with those people because again, they're amazed and it's fun to kind of put on that show and do stuff. But it's just funny to me that like there really isn't much anymore that inspires me in the creative sense at Spitting Caves. And that shot of him going forwards, shooting backwards, of us trying to time it, you know? That was something that hasn't been done, and I got really excited about that. So that was super cool, and I definitely want to go back and try and nail it more because I think I can jump more on top of it. I think there's like, if he falls and you like start with me just slightly above, so you can catch like the inside, and then being able to show the pike and have the toes point a little more, and just like, dude, there's ways to make it even better that I want, obviously, because perfectionism.
Sure, totally.
But like
that's like the ultimate playground for perfectionism, though. I feel like is the FPV reps. And reps for sure. You can do it all day.
But no, that was really fun. It was really interesting bouncing between him and you. So like we have a very established friendship and dynamic, and like I kind of know I can kind of poke and like say things towards you, and I can tell how you respond. I'm like, okay, that doesn't matter so much. Or like, okay, no, we're excited about this. Let's do this. Or I can be like, yo, I really want to nail this souk right now. Like I could tell you were like, dude, let's wrap it up. And I was like, I can push him a little more. Like we can stay.
Totally.
With him, it was different. You know, so it's like your direction, you're running the shoot, you're producing the whole thing. He's helping out, and dude, he killed it. But his vibe and his energy is like a different thing, and I got to have fun matching that. You know, like we instantly started talking about those different shots, and like, oh, we can do this, or hey, can you approach it from this way at Capenna, where I think it was his idea to kind of float down the rocks at first, and I was like, hey, can you like swoop around this one and try and do it from the side? So again, me thinking about how it's going to look, I'll adjust my dive in the air too, knowing what angle someone's filming from.
Yeah.
Like I know, okay, I need to make sure I hit this position at the right time.
Yeah, dude,
for different things.
that's a whole nother thing.
Whole different tangent. But for you, like it was really interesting because most of the time I've worked with people, it's been one person filming.
Yeah.
Or it's been like 12 people at Spinning Caves and I'm just diving and them all capturing
and they're
me.
doing your stuff.
You know, I've never done a project before where it was led by one person, but then someone else had that level of creative, like, hey, I need to get this shot and we can bounce ideas off each other. And so that was kind of a new experience that was really fun to have that different energy. And again, not like a more energetic or less energetic, but like just the way I interact with him, I could tell was a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because I had to get used to, you know, how long it took him to prep. Do you remember how it took a minute of like
a few minutes?
him having to do a test run and like
Yep.
he had to see what I was going to dive. And so then I have to do a couple extra reps so that he gets the idea of where we're going to be. And then we practice some timing. So, you know, every person you work with is different and every creative you get to do stuff has another aspect to it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring that up right here, that it was really cool, again, that you brought such an awesome team of people together to make something really cool.
Yeah.
And in the moment to get to experience how that shift of working with different people had an effect on like the creative process.
Yeah.
It was cool.
It's very cool. I'm glad you brought that up. That was like kind of the goal. You know, hopefully just bring together again, like good people that are good at what they do. And yeah, man, I think it turned out, I loved it. I think if you guys haven't seen it yet, definitely go see Dan do his thing. I think I enjoyed, especially again, the voiceover and just like giving a deeper look into what makes you tick as a human. And it's been such a pleasure getting able to make more stuff. Dude, I hope we do some more. And I definitely know we will do more stuff in the future for sure.
We will. But you got to, you know, as it goes, go do some other stuff that's going to be good. And then when you come back with our fresh idea, you know, it's going to be another round.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that you're working on now that you would like to kind of share about? Or is there things that you are looking forward to?
You know, it's an interesting question. The nonprofit I used to work with doing aquatic safety, it fell apart due to funding. And so there's a part of me that still wants to go explore that, try and be that person that develops aquatic safety curriculum and gets to help out more people. Again, going back to that whole theme of like, I want to help and, you know, provide in that sense. It was an interesting, we can go on other tangents here first. Like, I don't mean to take away, but
keep going, dude.
It was interesting on it was interesting that I was doing social media full time, right? I was working with different creatives. We were doing more photography. I was still cliff diving.
Yes.
And then this opportunity with a nonprofit came up, and to dive full into it, again, me wanting to do the best that I can do, it took me away from AdventureMan Dan. And so that persona does kind of belong in that 2014 to 2017 era, you know, and this different water safety Dan. Like I had to put a lot of that on the back burner, and getting to do this was a really fun throwback and like, oh, I can still get into this life and I can still do stuff.
Yeah.
And I missed it sometimes with that adventure. But I also recognize that like that fulfilling, like giving back to the community and creating more safety and like preventing drownings and training more people and training instructors to be better. Like the impact of teaching us some lesson versus training instructors to watch that multiply is the coolest feeling.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as cool as flipping upside down, but like really similar of just watching an impact. So I think that's the thing that I'm looking forward to, you know, whether that's going to be the very next thing I get to or whether it's something I'm going to circle back. I'm not positive, but I think that's something that I'm interested in trying to get back to more, is doing that aquatic safety stuff. I'm always going to be in the water.
I love it, man. I respect it so much. I think you make this place better because you're here 100%. And I think to see the way you've evolved over the years and been a friend of yours and just like, I'm here for everything you do, dude. And I guarantee I know I'm excited for the next film that we do, whatever that is, the stories that you want to tell, and just keep doing the incredible stuff you do. Where can the people see you? Where can they find your work? Is there AdventureMan Dan on Instagram, right?
AdventureMan Dan on Instagram. I'm toying with the idea of starting a new one called Swimming with Dan.
Nice.
It's going to be more swimming technique and water safety stuff. So the account exists. Don't think I have very many people follow me yet, but you know,
follow.
that's the you follow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think AdventureMan Dan's always going to be there, and it'll be kind of like that fun. It is going to be more that like highlighty, you know, the vibe that Instagram was back in that day. I think it's going to stay that niche kind of thing. and then I'm going to continue to evolve and grow as all people do, and kind of like, where else am I going to go? So those are probably the two places right now.
Awesome. And yeah, again, go see our film that we did. I think
that Nye absolutely killed. It's amazing.
Did.
It was all Nye. Literally all I did was sometimes I would jump away from him.
Yeah, sure.
I would jump off of a cliff and he did the magic. It was all him.
Oh my gosh. No, thanks, man. I appreciate you coming on, and freaking such a cool conversation.
Yeah.
Dude, to many more. I hope we do more films together, and thanks for being on, dude. Boom. All right. Peace out, everybody. That's the episode.